On a busy street in Los Angeles, people hurried past without noticing a homeless man named Robert. He sat quietly with a cardboard sign, hoping someone would spare a little change. Robert had been homeless for almost 2 years after losing his job and home, yet he still carried a kind smile despite his struggles. That day, after hours of sitting in the cold, he managed to collect a few dollars, just enough for a small meal. As evening fell, a young man approached him. He looked tired and said softly, "Sir, I haven't eaten all day. Can you help me with something?" Robert looked at the few crumpled bills in his hand. It was all he had to buy food for himself. For a moment, he hesitated, but then he smiled and placed the money into the stranger's hand. "Here, you need this more than I do," he said. What Robert didn't know was that the man wasn't truly hungry, he was testing Robert's kindness. Hidden cameras nearby were recording the moment. The man, deeply moved by Robert's selflessness, returned shortly after with bags of groceries, warm clothes, and a gift card. He revealed the truth and told Robert, "You gave me everything when you had nothing. Now, let me give something back to you." Robert's eyes filled with tears as he hugged the stranger tightly. The video was later shared online, and millions were shocked by the homeless man's generosity. People across America sent donations to help Robert get back on his feet. In the end, Robert's act of kindness, giving away the little he had, became a powerful reminder that true generosity comes not from abundance, but from the heart. In a small town in Texas, a young waitress named Sarah worked tirelessly at a local diner. She was only 22 but carried responsibilities far beyond her age. Her mother was battling a serious illness, and the medical bills kept piling up. Sarah worked double shifts, sometimes from morning until midnight, smiling at customers even when she was exhausted. Deep inside, she often wondered how long she could keep going. One evening, a quiet couple entered the diner. They sat in Sarah's section, ordering only coffee and a slice of pie. Sarah treated them with the same warmth and care as she did every customer, refilling their cups, asking about their day, and chatting with a cheerful smile. To her, it was just another table, but to the couple, her kindness stood out. When it was time to pay, the couple left cash on the table and quickly walked out. Sarah picked up the bill and froze in shock. The meal had cost just $12, but the tip left behind was $10,000, along with a handwritten note, "For your kindness, hard work, and endless smile. Never stop believing in yourself." Sarah's hands shook as tears filled her eyes. She ran outside to thank the couple, but they were already gone. At first, she thought it must be a mistake, but the diner confirmed it was real. The story spread like wildfire across the internet. People were stunned by the couple's generosity, and Sarah's genuine gratitude touched millions. With that one act, Sarah was able to pay off a large portion of her mother's medical bills and even take a break from double shifts. The kindness she showed every day had unexpectedly returned to her in the most life-changing way. In Chicago, a single father named David worked tirelessly to provide for his 2 young children. Every morning before sunrise, he left his small apartment and walked nearly 3 miles to the factory where he worked. With no car and limited bus service, this long walk had become part of his daily routine, rain or shine. By the time he arrived at work, his shoes were often soaked, and his body exhausted. Still, David never complained. His children's happiness was all that mattered. One morning, a colleague noticed him walking in the freezing cold, and decided to share his story online. He wrote about David's determination as a father, describing how he never missed a single day of work despite the hardship. The post quickly went viral, reaching thousands of people who were deeply moved. Among them was a local businessman who couldn't believe that someone worked so hard with so little support. The businessman contacted the colleague and arranged a surprise for David. A few weeks later, David was called outside the factory during his lunch break. Waiting for him was a shiny, gently used car with a big red ribbon on the hood. Confused, David asked what was happening. The businessman handed him the keys and said, "This is yours. We wanted to make your journey a little easier." Tears streamed down David's face as he hugged the man tightly. He had never imagined owning a car again. For him, this wasn't just transportation. It was time saved, energy restored, and more moments with his children. The story spread across the country, leaving millions inspired. What started as one man's struggle turned into proof of how kindness and community can completely transform a life. In a small town in Florida, a beloved middle school teacher named Mrs. Thompson dedicated her life to teaching. She was known for her patience, encouragement, and the way she treated every student like her own child. But behind her warm smile, she carried a painful secret: she was homeless. After her husband passed away and medical bills drained her savings, she could no longer afford rent. Quietly, she began living out of her old car, parking near the school each night and washing up in the restrooms before class. Her students had no idea, until one afternoon a few noticed Mrs. Thompson carrying bags to her car and staying there for hours. Curiosity turned into shock when they realized she was sleeping in her vehicle. Instead of gossiping, the kids decided to act. They shared the story with their parents, and soon the whole community got involved. Within weeks, the students organized a fundraiser, setting up bake sales, community events, and even an online donation page. Their goal was simple: to give their teacher a home. When Mrs. Thompson walked into the school gym one Friday afternoon, she thought she was attending a student event. Instead, she was greeted with balloons, banners that read, "We love you, Mrs. Thompson," and a check large enough to cover a year's rent. Overwhelmed, Mrs. Thompson broke down in tears, hugging her students one by one. "I teach you about kindness and responsibility," she whispered, "but today, you taught me." The story shocked America. Children as young as 12 had come together to change their teacher's life. It was a powerful reminder that compassion knows no age, and even the smallest hands can create the biggest impact. In New York, on a chilly winter morning, a young mother stood nervously at the checkout counter of a grocery store. Her cart was filled with essentials: milk, diapers, bread, but as the cashier read out the total, her face turned pale. She dug through her wallet, realizing she didn't have enough money to pay. Embarrassed, she whispered to the cashier, "I'm so sorry, I'll have to put some things back." Her little boy clung to her coat, confused and hungry. Behind her stood an elderly man, dressed in a worn-out jacket and a veteran's cap. He watched quietly as the mother struggled. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, placed his hand gently on her shoulder, and said, "Don't worry, ma'am, I've got this." He pulled out his wallet and covered the entire bill. The young mother turned to him, her eyes filled with tears. "Why would you do this for me?" she asked. The veteran smiled softly and replied, "Because once, when I came home from war with nothing, strangers helped me too. I promised myself I'd always pay it forward." The store fell silent. Even the cashier looked emotional as the veteran handed over the groceries. The mother hugged him tightly, thanking him again and again. Later, the story spread online after another customer recorded the moment. Millions were touched by the veteran's simple but powerful act of kindness. What shocked America the most was learning that the veteran lived on a very modest pension. He didn't have much, but he still chose to give. His act reminded everyone that true wealth is not measured by money, but by compassion. That day, one man's generosity lit up an entire community, and inspired countless others to pay kindness forward.